I love that. So can you talk about the illusions of the battle between God and the Leviathans?
So, what's so interesting is there's this Babylonian creation story that's called the Enuma Elish, and it's an interesting story. What it really is about is they're trying to wrestle with, how did the city of Babylon get to be the chief city, and how does Marduk, the Babylonian chief god, get to be at the top of the pantheon because he's not the oldest god. And so this story walks through, how creation begins with nothing but water, and through a series of battles, eventually Marduk fights this dragon named Tiamat, kills her, splits her in half, creates the world from her carcass, and then eventually creates humanity to do the work of the gods, there in the story. When you really dig down into the details, it is so clear that these biblical stories in Psalm 74, Psalm 89, Isaiah 51, Job 7, Job 26, and so forth, they're all alluding to this kind of story. And so God is fighting against the sea, which is also a dragon, just like Tiamat is also the sea in the Babylonian story. God is splitting the sea. He's creating the world from the remains of this, sort of chaotic mess that was there. And as a result, God becomes king. And it's the same story as what Marduk is doing in the Enuma Elish. It's the kind of illusion that somebody in the biblical world would have readily picked up on. That, when
Mm.
they hear God's fighting against the sea and becoming king and creating the world, well, this was just the story that was, circulating around at that time. And what the Bible's doing is, honestly, I think they're doing a couple of things with it. One thing the biblical authors are doing is speaking in the language of their neighbors. And so they're just, putting
Mm.
this into terms that I think maybe, on the one hand, maybe the Babylonians would understand, but truthfully, putting it in the language that Israelites influenced by Babylon would understand. Because the Israelites had, they've been in captivity in Babylon. They've heard these kinds of stories. These stories had made their way to Israel long before even the Babylonian exile. So part of what they're doing is even talking to their own people in theological terms that they would understand. And I don't think it's that crazy of an idea. This is what we do with our own kids, for example, when we try to teach them about theological ideas. I uh, I had a moment when it was not my finest parenting moment, but I let my sons watch Jurassic Park when they were far too young. All that 5 and 7 seemed like it was old enough. I mean, Barney's a dinosaur. There's dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. Surely it's about the
Sure.
same thing. And it was a disaster. My older son
Oh
was
no.
okay, but my younger son Elijah, my wife put him to bed. She comes out of the room and looks at me with this look that just says, "Thanks, you've broken the child." So, so
Oh.
I go in and there he is. He's got the little chin quiver going on,
Mm.
and I knew what was wrong, but I said, "Elijah, you okay?" And he says, "I'm kind of scared of the T-Rex." And I remember vividly saying to him, "Elijah, there are no more T Rexes." Well, you can imagine how well that went over for a kid who's just watched 2 hours of T Rexes on the TV. Of course, there are T Rexes. And I said, after that, I said, if there were any T Rexes, Abba, my sons call me Abba, I said, Abba would kill them. And he
Mm.
was he was a little bit better with that one. And the last one I said is, well, and besides, God is with us wherever we go. And you could tell at this moment that he was trying to buck up his courage a little bit. And he went, "Yeah." And God is so big that, like, his little toe could kick a T Rex and it would just kill him. And at that moment, I, of course, said to him, "Well, technically, son, God is incorporeal. And so he doesn't actually have little toes. And, it's sort of Orthodox Christian thought that it's wrong to attribute a body to God and so forth." And and at this point, when I'm telling this to my students, they're like, "You did what?" And I said, "No, of course I didn't tell him that. What I said was, you're right." But the truth is, he wasn't right. God is incorporeal and he doesn't have little toes to kick T Rexes and so forth. Well, why did I affirm something that theologically is not exactly true? It's because I was putting it into language he could understand. And I think that that's what some of these biblical authors are doing is they're borrowing these images of creation that are around them to put into terms that their readers and hearers could understand. This is, if there were a God who took on the sea and tamed the forces of chaos, it would be our God, and not Marduk, certainly.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this video clip from the Delgado podcast. To get more videos just like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. Take care.